I'm in a storm in England and I just made my most grim dark diorama yet.
And with any good diorama, we can start with our tea coaster and start making the base. Using this hot foam cutter, we can start to carve out the shape of the scene I would love to create. Now, in my opinion, Warhammer Space Marine Terminators are the coolest models out there, but sometimes they miss a little bit of jazz. So let's jazz all over these Marines, and using the mantra, more is more. And after compiling all of these bits, I think he's ready for battle. It's finally time to start shaping up our diorama. And guess what? It's clay time. For this, I'll be using Daz air drying clay, as it means we won't have to do any baking, and it dries rock solid within a day. And I found these really cool resin bits from Epic Basing, and I wanted to create a world that felt a bit Nordic, and it gave that cold spring vibe of the year. So I then hot glued all of the resin bits onto the diorama. Initiate clay phase part 2. This clay is a lot different than the first one. It's full of texture, and honestly creates the most perfect dirt ground terrain you'll ever see. Well, maybe not ever. But the only drawback is it will stick to everything, and it will never let you go. So once the clay had dried, I then soaked in isopropyl alcohol. This will break any of the surface tension later on when I thin down the white glue and pour it all over that bad boy. I then sprinkled on some shredded bark and foam flocking for the ultimate ground texture. And with the diorama fully built, it's time to paint the big boy, the man of the hour. I wanted to paint a grey wolf and started by airbrushing with Space Wolves Grey, but man, I don't know if it's because that paint's old, but it took like 4 to 5 coats. So after repainting the white helmet, I then dry brushed a bluey grey all over the armor panels. And stippled and dry brushed a nice light cold grey. Then, after applying the best yellow paint of all time, it's time to paint all of the silver armour in what is my favourite metallic paint, black metal. So for some contrast, I wanted to paint some gold on the armour as well, and I laid down a layer of decayed metal. This is the most beautiful bronzy colour and is such a nice base coat for future gold. And a couple of people asked me, have I ever messed up when I paint? And yes, pretty much every single project I mess up. And somehow my immediate reaction is to flood my paintbrush with as much water and dilute the messed up paint as quickly as possible. I don't know if I recommend to do this, but it has worked 9 times out of 10. It's never worked with a metallic paint though, so don't try that on metallics. I then painted his helmet, which I do repaint much later. Next, it's onto the cape. I painted a skeleton horde mixed with dark oath flesh all over the base of the cape, and then added some wildwood into the mix for a second coat, aiming towards the bottom of the fur for a nice transition. Now let's finish that gold by adding some highlights all over the bronze to make a really nice contrast. Now it's time to paint the entire cape red, highlighting the edges to make it look more natural, and finally finish the cape. And for all of the skulls and other bony bits, I used a mixture of saffron shade and Nuln oil. Then after a quick bath and some enamels, it's time to get dank.
Access granted.
So I made this broken and destroyed Tyranid to go on the diorama. And before brutalizing a Space Marine, let's quickly get some layers of paint down on this diorama. I primed it black with an airbrush black primer. Then I gave it a zenithal highlight, meaning I practically sprayed white from above to really make those details pop. After that, I sprayed some lovely greens all over the diorama, as I want this to be a nice kind of mossy rockland. And finally, dark brown to add that dirt. Now, this is where the fun begins. It's time to do something I have never done before. It's time to go grim dark. After watching some of Maverick Paints' videos, I really wanted to do some gore. So I ripped up this guy's chest armor and got rid of those damn pesky legs. I used Milliput to create the rib cage and a bit of plastic for that leg bone. And using Tamiya putty, we can create the devastation that his body had faced. This Tamiya putty is basically liquid plastic and it's really cool. I'll definitely do some features on it later on. So after base coating him in the same scheme, I started painting all of the flesh in a dark brown. Followed by these 3 red and glorious paints, getting progressively lighter, then finally adding some blood for the blood gods, all that beautiful shine. I then painted his ribs in a bleached bone paint, as we'll come back later with some blood for the blood gods to make it look extra fresh. Next, it's time to paint this poor chap's face. I made this face by cutting in half a skeleton skull and gluing it together with some putty. I then painted his face to look a little worse for wear, and repeated the same blood effects from the body. Now, for this being my first time giving a more horror aspect to a diorama and to a miniature, I actually love it. It's actually a lot of fun to do this more taboo side and more lore accurate side. Let me know what you think. I think I might do some more stuff like this. And I should have painted the skull first, but that mixture of Nonal and Sephram Shade goes a long way. Now, let's finish off the diorama. I painted the rocks with the same colours as the Space Marines with a nice bright dry brush of grey. Now in my imagination, this Terminator has just been called as backup, a last resort to the front lines. All that meets him is the loss of his fellow brothers. They fought valiantly, but it's time for him to pick up his brother's sword and fight on. Next, it's time to paint the Tyranid, so I started with a white base, then painted all of his carapace with Magos purple, then with a diluted pink I painted it over all of the skin tones, then reapplying white after for the highlights, and then a brown wash just to grim it and dirty it up a bit. Next, it's time to get mossy. I placed this pretty much everywhere as I wanted it to look like a creature or a plague is slowly crawling its way through the rocks. Now it's time to pop this poor chap down, and using Uhu glue, we can create the blood pouring from his wounds. What a sad day. And wait for it. Are you waiting? After adding the extra Tyranid and the Terminator, look how cool it is. I'm actually so happy with this, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and sub. I really appreciate it. Love you all, and I'll catch you in the next one.